Welcome to Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Richard Miller, and my co-host is disc golf's answer to Tiger Woods. He may not have the prodigious talent, but he loves the strippers, and he's always injured. Dr. Luke Gledall. How are you doing today, Luke?
I'm good. I'm good. What a great comparison that was, Rich. Thank you so much.
I just like to, G you up, make you feel good about yourself. But you've sort of discovered a new hobby. I
have, yeah. I love it. I've become one of those people. I'm feeling the plastic of discs. I'm spending a lot of money on discs. I went for a disc golf lesson this morning. Yeah, I love it. It's great.
Excellent. The satisfying swish of hitting those chains as you get a hole.
God, God, he does his research, ladies and gentlemen.
And do you think? I mean, you've previously been an ultimate frisbee person.
Yeah, I was one of those people. Yeah, I had this crazy idea that I could go and just be completely out of sorts with any kind of sporting events and think, this is going to be my thing. I'm going to be so good at this. But since I went to University of Leicester, we were pretty close to Loughborough University, where everybody there is on the spectrum of being sporty.
Big sportos.
And, massive sportos. Yeah. And that kind of put me in my place. But anyway, we're not
so you could, an autobiography could be A Life in Discs.
Sure.
That could be a title for you.
Sure, yeah. And I could also maybe transition into being like a hospital radio DJ at some point. But there we go. It all goes full circle, like the spinning of a frisbee and the spinning of the vinyl I play on hospital radio.
And the title for the follow-up writes itself, as long as you make a sort of right turn at some point in life into gay porn. We'll just leave that there. We'll leave that there. Okay. What are we doing today, Luke?
What are we doing today? So I think this is a good time to do kind of in this kind of, the never regions of the seasons. Rich and I have kind of got a bit of a determination to fill a bit of time and get to 100 episodes. We've done some kind of themed episodes before. And one of the things we've done is we've done a bunch of different Gravy watch clubs where we've done the watch along episodes, but we've also done watch along games. Sorry. We've also done documentaries, some kind of prominent documentaries. And one that kind of came up, and which I think is a great time to look at doing this, being in this position and time of great uncertainty. We're leaping into these episodes to keep momentum desired, do this podcast in very kind of uncertain times, and hopefully things are coming back to a degree of normality. But I think it kind of nice to go full circle to look at the QPR documentary from 2011-12 4-year plan. And I think it's really, really interesting because I think with looking at this documentary, it's very much a team in a poor state, then kind of redeemed, but then redeemed over kind of a long time and gone through some very kind of difficult, tumultuous times in the boardroom and ownerships. And I think there's a lot of parallels. I think I kind of do this in some kind of blind hope for some degree of better days for Sheffield Wednesday in the future.
Yeah.
I would be staggered if they come at the hand of the current regime. But yeah, I think it's nice to try and think about some of the let's spend this summer trying to think about some of the positives kind of coming. I mean, I want to give a huge shout out again to the excellent Hours Americas. Thank you, Paddy, for mentioning our podcast. Also followed up by James on the podcast mentioning that we're probably the podcast for people who are sadomasochists. Rich and I kind of can't really unidentify from that label. We kind of get ourselves. So I think it'd be nice to just have a nice, light, breezy summer of looking at some fun things regarding Sheffield Wednesday and some fun things we can do, hopefully, on this podcast.
Yeah. And with that in mind, we are abundantly conscious that Uh, there is news almost every day out of the club, but we'd just rather not talk about it too much. It's a lot of speculation. There's not a huge amount of actual fact. It's all kind of someone's nan said and someone close to someone said. I mean, knowing what we know from the club, I'm sure so much of it is true. Unfortunately, more is probably true than we would like to be. But I just think for the time being, as you say, this is the summer. It's been quite enjoyable not to think and worry about Sheffield Wednesday actively for a small period of time, and we're gonna sort of keep that bubble going. But this documentary is a 4-year plan. There are some natural parallels to things that we've seen. I think in some ways you could look at it as taking some of the same gambles and maybe getting different outcomes. There's other links in that. Neil Warnock makes an appearance, who has been the sort of pantomime baddie of Sheffield Wednesday's panto twice there. He's been the sort of the evil stepsister, or Baron von Hardup for the whole time. Basically, he's been involved in the game. He's been there, sort of thumbing his considerable nose at Sheffield Wednesday. So he's part of this, and this was not something that we planned. But it turns out that the person who produced, directed, and wrote the film is a Sheffield Wednesday fan. So there's a few links there. It's not completely out of the blue. It was, I think, one of the things early doors. QPR start off with a less than good season under this new regime, and it was the season to sort of place us in Wednesday's timeline. It was the season where we lost our sort of last day shootout with Crystal Palace this time rather than Derby. So that just sort of puts you in the era, the right era for this. So sort of setting the scene. The aptly named Journeyman Pictures production. It starts with the 2008 takeover of QPR by 3 Formula One bosses: Bernie Eccleston, Flavio Briatore, Alejandro Agag, and then also steel magnate Lakshmi Mittal and his son-in-law Amit Bhatia. Sorry.
Can I just kind of bring in a little bit of connection? Because the interesting thing, so it's the 4-year plan, isn't it? That's the name of the documentary. That's what they say that they're going with for a timeline to get promotion to the Premier League. I believe it was 2007. I think they were taken over.
I think you're right. I think it's sort of, I think it's one of those strange things where it's 4 years, but it's 3 seasons, 3 full seasons.
Because it must have happened during the 07-08 season.
I think so.
But we don't spend any time looking at that.
No, it's just skipped over.
Yes. Yeah. Very much so, yeah. So there was 2007. I think, as you say, the year focus of this is 08, 09, 09, 10, which is a Sheffield Wednesday relegation season. Last relegation season before this one.
Yes.
And then, 2010, 2011, when they finally achieved their promotion to the Premier League. So that's the timeline we're looking at for this one.
And just to place it, we've spoken about the Leeds documentary, and we've spoken about the Sunderland Till I Die on Netflix, and kind of compared and contrasted. There's an element of the vanity project here, because the opening scroll says that the filming was paid for by the board, or mainly funded by the board. So there's a touch of, we're rich, we're doing something fancy, come watch us do it. But they do say that the filmmakers had complete freedom over where they pointed the cameras and what made it into the film. And I do think it doesn't pull punches. I think there's several people come off looking pretty poor from this, which we'll get into at length, I'm sure. Were you immediately struck by the fact that 2008 looked like a really long time ago?
Yes, I was. Like it's funny always looking at the continued accelerated pace of football,
Yeah.
that it makes everything dated prior to when we actually start looking at some of the details, some of the kits and the stylings and what was just happening just during the time. And obviously the quality of the filming as well. Because it's kind of like aging. It's imperceptible day on day, but over the years it does, those changes are quite significant in the mirror.
I think
Really.
digital filming has just pulled everything up to a certain standard. I think everything
Yeah.
look, whereas this does have moments that look quite home video at times,
Mm.
through no fault of its own. I'm sure it was good enough at the time, but just with the years and the
Do you find
glare.
it's kind of interesting because there's some interesting bits I want to kind of pick up just from that kind of opening kind of scroll that kind of fades in. So interesting from the opening that they talk about being the narrative of being a founder member of the Premiership, of the Premier League,
Yes.
which in the great history and context of things isn't huge, but I say it's not a big call to fame, but it's one that's oddly prescient for these days and times for the narrative of football, right?
Well, so much. I think Sky very much at the forefront of this, but there's almost every record is given in terms of the Premier League and the top scorers in Premier League history,
Yeah,
the most. So yeah, I think there's almost an a BC AD sort of thing with football, and the Premier League is the start of the Premier League is the start of that new age, or that's what they want. They almost want it to be. Don't forget the history, forget the pyramid. It's all about the Premier League. It's part of the Premier League's own branding. Very much is we stand alone almost.
Exactly, which is interesting for a kind of it's funny that we have this like Fahrenheit 451 narrative with all the history books just being tossed in a massive bonfire, right?
Yeah.
I also find it interesting. So there's mention they floundered in the lower leagues, and I kind of completely blanked on. I think they had like 2 or 3 seasons in the third tier, which I think was that really weird transition period for the EFL, or what it was previously known as before, when it used to be Premiership, Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. Then that was a rechristened Championship, League 1, League 2.
Yeah. That did make me chuckle because that is introduced with the founding of the club, isn't it? So they say QPR was founded in 1882, and after a few years of success, kicked around in the lower league. So it's just literally like 100 something years, 120 years of history, just summed up in about 3 words. Of like, yeah, they didn't do much. Didn't do much for that first 120 years, but now the Formula One boys are here.
And also with that narrative, the tale comes up of liquidation threats and debts of 18 million. And my comments is that little, hey? That must be 100 million. That must be 100 million in today's money.
I'm sure.
Isn't it just so staggering? I mean, it's like it is. I think the appeal of something looking like this is the fact that, as a matter of fact, it's a real traveling Wilburys of football finances, isn't it, really? Of kind of moneyed characters within the world of sport and the world at large, I'd say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's getting to see, because you are talking, these are that caricature of rich, aren't they? Like, yeah, particularly the Formula One guys. There's a gorgeous looking woman on the arm that really doesn't look like she wants to be there, really doesn't look like she enjoys getting kissed. But she is fabulous looking. And I guess, it's a mutually benefit at some level. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. There's boats, there's sunglasses, there's daft cars, there's unnecessarily taking helicopters for short journeys. This is the Richie Rich school of richness. This is not prudent businessmen eking away at their piles and piles of money. This is splashy, gauche richness, in your face richness. And a lot of shiny puffer jackets. Maybe that's what Chris Wilder is trying to be, like a bit nouveau riche with his shiny puffer jacket. One early moment I just jotted down. Again, this was sort of in that opening. We were getting little clips of the new owners being introduced to the press, and then intertwined with facts about QPR and a bit of scene setting. And we saw Batia saying, QPR is a really strong brand. That's one of the things that attracted us to the club, as the old badges chucked in the bin.
Yeah. I really remembered when that rebrand happened for QPR. And I really hated that. That logo is hideous.
It is.
Like, the font choice is bad. It just loses any warmth. You know, by the fact it's made look, I'm not a graphic designer, to make it look flat as that, it just looks bad. And then this was, I think we've probably made reference to previously in the podcast about, I can't remember which other team we talked about, but they had a period of calling themselves the Pride of London.
They did, yes.
Which again is thanks to, like, it is fascinating, the fact about the talk of becoming an international brand is the most hilarious bullshine these people come out with. But it is funny because they're people who live those lifestyles. And I don't know if there's so much nose clams going around and so much yes men that I think those people genuinely think and believe those things. And I think with the fact that the sheer monies that they have and that kind of arrogance and that kind of focus probably available to make it a bit more of a reality, I guess. I mean, I thought it was funny because I know it's funny because it's not really kind of like a big, like in the world of kind of the rich foreign fancy dandy man who comes in and makes your football club a plaything, but also in that kind of sense tries to do a bit of marketing in their home country. There's no kind of big identifiers for where that place is. I mean, this is another great bit. A few bits around this point. Just a quick bit. The dressing room with winners only on the door. Oh, those Cockney comedians. I said I did pause a lot to make notes. It's a heady cocaine rush montage of Lucre being spunked around. So maybe that's the link. The Gulf Air promotion, which is the Bahrain national air carrier. You know, the chap from there states how QPR wants to establish themselves in the Champions League. Luke notes, could you imagine Warnock doing it in their half of the Bernabeu, kicking lumps out of Lewandowski?
Well, interestingly, one of the first things Warnock says as he walks through the door is to get rid of that sign, the winners only sign.
Yes.
That'll have to go. It's about the second thing he says through the door. Hello, that'll have to go. Like, it's almost...
Annoyingly, there isn't a place for this. I think this is probably from what is the earlier Colin documentary that is often used and often... I need to find it. I need to probably watch that for the sake of like my football documentary experiences. But you know, I was chatting with my eldest brother Andy, as I usually do, and he came out with the Warnock quote: "Enjoy it, lads, but fucking enjoy it in their half."
Yes.
Which we didn't get to hear here, but anyway, that's something.
It may just be called Warnock. I've seen a thing saying Warnock is the best football documentary on YouTube.
Oh, there we go.
Which is, call a spade a spade. I guess it's a good title. So, I mean, obviously we'll get to, because there's a feature, isn't there? He will have his time in this. Yeah. We get a very early title drop from title drop moment as Briatore says the plan is Premier League in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are you ready to sort of launch into?
I am. Can I just provide a bit of kind of context here? Because I think it's interesting kind of look at this QPR side. I kind of remembered, it feels more prime than my memory because it was kind of Luke coming back off his, pronounced sabbatical. Yeah. And kind of around that time. So I think I know kind of a lot of this QPR side of that era. I actually took a screenshot of the Wikipedia squad from the 08-09 season.
Oh, nice.
So we have Lee Camp, obviously very much pronounced championship goalkeeper of said era, less so these days. Damien Delaney, Damien Stewart, Gavin Marn, who is featured.
Yes.
Lanky centre-back Fitz Hall.
Oh, yeah.
Piggy Michaela Lagertwood.
Yeah.
Have you pronounced that last name? Wayne Routledge, Rowan Wine, Akos Bazaki,
Yes.
Patrick Aguiman, Casper Gawkes, Martin Rowlands, Geordie Peter Ramage, Matthew Connolly, Lee Cook, Liam Miller, Angelo Balanta, who I remember being quite good at one point.
Oh, yeah.
Jordi Lopez, I don't know much about. And then that's kind of going down. Who else have we got?
Yeah.
Up here. Hogan Ephraim is a young striker. Helder Helgeson, Heider Helgeson.
Heider Helgeson, yeah.
Gareth Ainsworth.
Legendary championship marksman, Helgeson, really.
Exactly.
Do you get a kick? Are you the same as me? You just get a kick out of seeing somebody like Helgeson? Like the memories of being worried so many times and being linked with him and think, like just somebody like that is just so. I'm sure every club that's had a dalliance with the championship will have memories of him scoring against them, and also getting excited about maybe getting him on loan because he's one of those players that had periods where he was out of sides and things like that. So you go, we're going to get him till the end of the season. So it's an inauspicious start. The first game is a loss away at Birmingham. Ian Dowie is the manager at this point, and immediately
on the trip to the stadium, the owners get excited about that fanzine where they have one of them is the mini me.
Yes,
there's a Austin Powers referenced. If this thing wasn't dated enough.
Yeah, well, it's a fanzine. I mean, it could happen today. Really, a mini me reference on a fanzine. But yeah, Briatore is Dr. Evil, and Bernie Eccleston is the mini me, and they love that on the way to the ground. We'll have to get a copy. Not meaning that they will get a copy. There will be some little person's job to go and get a copy of the fanzine.
Exactly.
I mean, immediately there is sacking talk from the owners. Immediately. We're also introduced to a very sort of large character in the documentary as a whole, who's Giordani Palladini as the sporting director. So not one of the board. I believe he was there before the takeover. I think he was the chairman before the takeover.
Right, because there's a lot of kind of glossed over from near the base of this spine in this Wikipedia kind of squad listing. We do have a couple of Italianos, Matteo Alberti and Samuel De Carmine. I do recall De Carmine, who was on loan from Fiorentina. And then obviously we get into some of the links. What is it? Tomasio?
Yes, Tomasi. So Tomasi being Damiano Tomasi, who joined at the age of 34 and seems to, may have been a son of Briatore's. I don't know. He's got a special place in Flavio's heart. So I said we're introduced to Palladini. Palladini on the phone to some unknown party, begging that the other person talk some sense into Briatore, who's desperate to try and sack Dowie. We then see the next thing is Dowie is sacked, so Briatore gets his way after 15 games in that first season,
and appointed in the summer as well.
Yes.
There's also a fun bit that they kind of talk out. They talk very candidly outside the ground in the Italian accent, which is subtitled for us who do not know that. And they kind of say there's no strategy. I said, I think it's a little harsh that they think Ian Dowie has no strategy. I mean, he's a marked hoofball merchant who is sour and hilariously looks like Earthworm Jim. Around that time, I'd like to say, Wednesday make a courtesy appearance of being ahead of QPR on the table with a -6 goal difference. The true marker of a poor side being worse than Wednesday.
like 8th in the table with a -6 goal difference, wasn't it? It was like we were top half with still like a whopping minus.
A little bit of a mini kind of different gravy connection, which really pleased me, Rich. Some of the beautiful shots around going to grounds. I said, the blurred Frankie and Benny's behind the Levity Stadium. The true liberty in life to enjoy second-rate Italian fare.
I did enjoy. I don't know. There's something about in this sort of context seeing all those all those sort of less glamorous chunks of around football grounds and things like that. I think maybe partly because we're all been stuck in our houses for a year. You know, the thought of an away day is mouth-watering at this point. Caretaker manager, coincidentally, rock and roll Wickham manager Gareth Ainsworth.
Yes. At one point, they proclaim they are happy with Gareth Ainsworth. Beautiful language, the Italian languages.
Oh, it's gorgeous. We see a headline saying that Briatore picks the team. We see him pushing for Tomasi to play. And Tomasi being this aged Italian defensive midfielder. Jump in whenever, Luke. But I the next thing I picked up was Palladini saying, "This is such a good team. In most teams, there are so many whoremongers, so many assholes around that only cause problems."
Oh, I love that's again probably a genuine thing I could say about the Italian language. The fact that you have a word which gets translated out as whoremongers as being a common insult in the Italian dialects is pretty fantastic. I enjoyed around this time Bernie Eccleston creeping into the dressing room like some Andy Warhol-like businessman.
Yes,
that was nice. I really like, the best way to influence play, Rich. Do you know how that is as a chairman? You go through the masseuse.
Go through the masseuse. Well, that was. I mean, that Eccleston in the changing room moaning that they're spending way too much on waters was very funny. It's just such skin flintery. And then we see Briatore being very blasé in front of cameras about sacking people, but then also blatantly trying to affect team decisions. Sending Palladini to talk to the masseuse and request 2 substitutes, and maybe a sort of recipe for disaster. He calls for Mahan to come on, and in a worst case scenario for everyone involved, Mahan scores the winning goal, adding great dollops of fuel to the egomaniacal fire. A real personal victory for Flavio. We then see sexy Paulo Sousa revealed as the new manager.
Paulo Sousa, the suave managerial bastard. I said it's always the fit as fuck Portuguese, isn't it?
He is. He's a good-looking chap, man alive.
I know. It makes me I thought he had a more pronounced managerial career. That was a bit funny thing to go back and look at. I remember him did he do well at Swansea?
I think he did okay. I vaguely remember him doing okay there.
I think he had a higher reputation than what he delivered. I think it's probably comfortable to assume. And it's also making me wonder, is he getting his jobs because he's a good-looking chap?
I think you'd be charmed by him, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
He really has had. He's had an almost Carlos-esque. So QPR was his first managerial job. Interesting. Then he was at Swansea, but only for a year. Leicester it must have been months he was at Leicester because it's only 2010.
Wow, he was at Leicester. I think I forgot about that.
Ton. It's really good. He was there for a couple of years. Maccabi, Tel Aviv, Basel, Fiorentina, then China, Bordeaux. He's currently the Poland manager. So
he's the Poland manager?
Yes. He's basically had a team a season, almost. It's pretty crazy.
Once he wines and dines and has his way with... It makes it sound like he's the one putting them to the side. I'm done with you. I've had my fun. Trot along. When actually he's a crap manager. Everyone's just getting rid of the periodic basis. Anyway. So in terms of kind of next kind of points... I've got a big one with. Did you really enjoy the meeting with the fans? I think that kind of comes up next.
Yes.
Isn't every club a family club?
I know.
It's the most trotted out thing. Oh, this is a family club. Do you mean that families go there? That's That's kind of every football club.
I do remember when they came in the door, the owners talking about it. So what comes up is the fact that the fans are really unhappy with the fact that they've used the word boutique to describe the club.
Yes.
And I do remember the sort of early doors of those owners kind of talking about turning it into a kind of a bougie little, keeping the ground small and upping the prices, basically. So this is the fans not happy with the prices. The guy at the end, I can't remember the exact.
Yes.
I wish I could remember the exact words, but he's like, "We do want to do well, though. Whatever we say, we would." It's just like, of course you do. You're fans of the club. Like, you don't need to say that last bit.
I don't want another trip to League One.
No, please. Would you promise me that? And the rare sighting of a British mullet as well in that.
I want to say that QPR fan from my notes looks like John Cena playing a Cockney wearing a coonskin hat. Forgive me, because it's a difficult word to say that sounds like I'm being racist, but you know what I mean. I've pronounced the chap as Davy Cocknett.
Well, I wonder if it's an overhang, because in my mind, I do associate Jerry Francis with QPR very strongly, and he was a bemulleted chap, wasn't he? I wonder if
it's a staggering haircut. Like, it's funny to look back at and think it, like, you think, this is an old documentary. It's from about 10, 11, 12 years ago when this happened. But you're there thinking, yeah, but that haircut's from a lot. It's like it's been passed down from generations, Rich.
It's a family haircut. That's what we have to say about the English mullet.
It's not a boutique haircut, no. I enjoyed within that scene the divisions laid out across an impeccably small table. That's always a fun thing to look at now, especially because we're in this world of social distancing. There are so many impeccably small places within football clubs.
Yes.
Lots of very pokey offices where people are just piling in. However, that division on the table, Rich, schmancy waters for the rich at one end and lukewarm bottles of Fanta for the peasants.
Get them a couple of bottles of Tango, they'll be fine. We had a montage of misses there. There's a little bit of Wednesday. They missed a couple of shots for Wednesday.
I said, I guess it means a lot that you would use the footage of not be able to bag against Wednesday's £20 million defence.
And after the misses against Wednesday, we zoom in on a headline in a newspaper. Couldn't hit a cow's R's, but with their nickname R's, not arse.
Beautiful. I bet the local journalist is like, I'll put that one away. I'll use it again in 7 years.
I reckon it gets used like once a season.
You mean it's the one?
Are we going to use the R's? Are we going to use the R's again today? No, not yet. Okay, all right.
It's the 1 year plan, Rich.
The 1 year plan. I've made a note. I've always wondered what a sporting director does day to day. If this film is to be believed, it's mainly angrily scribbling on a fixture list and guessing how many points you might get. Because we see Gianni doing that about 3 times in short succession. We need 7 points from these games.
Because obviously the football manager and the players wouldn't have any idea about that, would they?
Not without a sporting director there to tell them.
What's my motivation in this game? Your motivation is to get 7 points from these 3 games. Okay.
A stupid manager might look at those fixtures and go, should we try and win all of them? And then no. The sporting director's like, let's try and get 7 points from these next 5 games.
Oh, I loved some of the montage. There's one shot which I have no context of what happened, but they opened some football gates in the snow to let the fans in. I'm like, what are you... Why are you complaining about big ticket prices? Just wait by a gate, and one of the stewards will just let you everybody flood in for free.
There was then a meeting about cutting costs, and we got the reveal that Downey was paid off to the tune of £2 million across million owned.
Oh, he's there like, don't worry about my. He's there going to the people at Sky, being like, oh, don't worry about what you're going to pay me for Soccer Saturday, lads. Don't you worry.
So I suppose that's an interesting little like behind the scenes, isn't it? Because so effectively, I guess Dowie was owed 2.5 million, and presumably they said, well, if we give it you now, will you take 2? So they've saved 500,000, and Dowie's got a whopping payoff all at once. But it just kind of boggles the mind, doesn't it? That's big money.
Think of the savings.
Think of the savings.
There's just such a dazzling compilation of what did I just see there. Like, that's the thing I think just entices and excites the eyeballs in this documentary. It's a lot of time to get in. There's a lot of shots that they've got. I love the quick shot of the players just rolling the ball around their bodies continually. There's so many kind of really tedious looking, bizarre warm-up pieces that people do in football. And it's like, why are you doing that? You're not going to be carrying the football.
In a kind of QVC type deal, if you sack 4 Ian Dowies, you get the 5th Ian Dowie free.
Now, if you go elsewhere, you'd probably only roughly get about 3 Ian Dowies for this. But today, we'll give you 5 Ian Dowies and free shipping. So
as a result of the meeting, we see Fitz Hall, I believe, giving Palladini some stick as he arranges to a deal where leading scorer Dexter Blackstock is loaned to Forest.
Yeah.
Paulo Sousa is asked about that after the next game, where I think they didn't score again. And it was interesting, wasn't it? Because it was very much one of those your side, my side, and the truth type moments. Because I think Sousa was careful in his words, but he did sort of intimate that he wasn't really given a choice. He was told about it ahead of time.
Why is that? But it's a little bit commonplace, I want to say.
Well, Palladini's sort of saying, well, if you'd said you didn't want to, we would have stopped it. But I don't know. I mean, so we see Palladini scrambling with Briatore. These guys start off well, then they get big-headed. Newspapers, interviews, their names in lights. It goes to their head. At the beginning, he always had a tracksuit on. After a while, he's got his hand in his pocket, all dressed up like Mourinho.
Can we just talk about, I think it might have been the same thing that you were talking about, the meeting where it must have been Palladini. I think I made the mistake of writing down Briatore. It's Palladini, right? I'm just so racist. All those Italians just, look, they're saying. I need to sample Palladini saying 442 repeatedly for a hip-hop beat. Did you also love Sal's... Briatore.
Sousa having his meeting with the board. I think it is Briatore that keeps saying fa-fa-tu, fa-fa-tu, fa-fa-tu.
Fa-fa-tu. Saza protesting, and some games I played with free strikers is pure gold. I see your 2 strikers. I raise you 3 strikers.
Oh dear. So all this leads to Sousa is sacked. So we're on manager number 2 for this season. For divulging highly confidential and sensitive information. We later see Briatore saying that Sousa had bad-mouthed players and everybody on the internet. But we then see Palladini saying he has a plan. They need someone cheap who doesn't want to change any of the squad and is willing to take orders. And we start to see some of the backlash now. So Briatore and the board are booed at a home game, actually against Wednesday.
Excellent.
He wants the name of the booers or he'll sell the club. And then that's kind of the end of that season.
I've got a lot of little scrappy little notes from this bit.
Go for it.
Just about Blackstock going in March is great. I miss those transfer windows.
Yeah.
I just want to do business.
Or the
lack of, yeah. Shout out to the subtitles that we used, which captured Sousa going off as instructive shouting. I'm learning a lot, Rich. I'm learning that the Italian for idiot is idiota.
Idiota. Yes.
I love that journo who wasn't paying attention, who was asking the other guy over the shoulder. That was about the selling of like.
Yeah.
Like the journo, obviously, in his mind, I imagine he was saying, "Wait, what happened? I was thinking about a pickled onion sandwich I was going to have later." The officers again are so depressingly shit English officers.
Yeah.
The thing it's hilarious. Like there's files. Oh, I don't know what those files are for. I love the printout of the wages. That was great.
Yeah.
Wrongdoing is a great word in English language. Shout out to wrongdoing.
Certainly is.
I love the club statement of Sal's sacking put out in some archaic Microsoft Word template. They did a good job with the formatting, I'm going to say, Rich. They're clearly paying some office stalwarts the big bucks for a half decent Word template.
They get someone in over the summer. They get a work experience in, and they do all of the possible letters for the season ahead.
They had they cut to some people on Sky Sports News. Here's one person saying, that he's going to tear up his season ticket. But I mean, that's the problem with new football these days is you can't tear up a season ticket anymore, can you?
No.
You bend your season ticket card to the point that it almost breaks.
I'm going to take a pair of scissors to my season ticket. Even then, the chip might still work if I'm tempted to come back.
I love the shot of the QPR fans outside of Boozer named the Springbok. It's a pub that advertises that it has a dartboard, Rich. This is it.
Is that when they were saying Briatore is a wanker?
I believe that was the one, yeah. Like, I don't know. Yeah. God, those people in the big smoke know how to live, don't they? They have pubs that advertise they have dartboards. Other places don't advertise it up north, and then you just go in and there's a dartboard already fucking there. End of the season, still dog shit, but they're above Wednesday. So that's progression, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Rich, you've got the package right there. How is it?
It's black and gold. It speaks to quality and untold goodness. So this is the Weed Whacker electric nose and ear hair trimmer. Waterproof, got that same skin-safe technology as well. 9,000 RPM motor and a 360-degree rotary stainless steel blade system. So you're not missing any angles. I don't know if you know about
they
angles.
They really don't shirk on quality, do they? I do know a little bit about angles, but why don't you tell me more about angles?
Well, 360 is pretty much all of those angles covered. 360 degree.
Gotcha.
It's right up there in terms of coverage of angles. It's cordless. It's rechargeable. It's got a 90-minute battery in there. I mean, it's a lovely looking thing. Again, you end up with a product that's not just useful, but also a looker as well. I'm looking for.
It's drop dead gorgeous, I must say.
And I'm looking forward to whacking that up my schnoz and in my lug holes, clearing them out. I imagine I'll be hearing more things.
Yeah,
smelling new scents.
There you go. You're going to be a changed man next time we talk.
Absolutely, it's pinnacle performance in a tight package. This is what you want. No nicks or snags.
That's what she said.
Thank you for the folks that have gone ahead and ordered things. We're kind of shocked and amazed and hugely pleased that some people have. If you want to go ahead and make a purchase, if you've been holding off through the month of April, it's still happening in May. You can get along to manscaped.com and use the code GravyBalls to get 20% off and free shipping. Turn that gooch into Gucci with Manscaped. That's part of the new copy, Luke. Do you like that? You've always been a fan of alliteration,
yes.
And you've always really liked the peritoneum. So that's your two favorite things together.
They speak to everything I want with their quality products. Manscaped.com, gravy balls, and 20% off and free shipping. Manscaped, your balls will thank you.
So does that bring us to season 09-10, I guess? Does it, Rich?
It does. And new manager, they found the man that was cheap. Wouldn't want to change the squad and was willing to take orders. And that man was Jim Magilton.
Formerly of this parish.
During the photo op, he said, "You're probably thinking he's better looking than Ian Dowie, but not as good looking as Paula Sousa." Spot on. Who is Jim?
That's exactly what we were thinking, Jim.
That is such a sort of merry-go-round thing. It's like there's probably the photographer's got that world-weary look in his eyes, like this is the fourth visit to Loftus Road in as many months.
I wish I could find out what was some of the background music for this documentary. It was kind of like an English Yola tango. I kind of enjoyed it, I must say.
Yeah.
At times, like the music was quite good. Sometimes it was really bad,
I
but
agree.
yeah.
It's enjoyable. It's well, we'll do a kind of overall thing, but it's 90 minutes that slips down easy. It's got to be said.
It does.
We see them working away on the minutiae of a budget, tweaks to the costs of meals, flowers in boxes, adding up to savings of $375,000 a season, which is great. But they're running through managers like there's no tomorrow. They just
need to pay Paul Hart in sandwiches, don't they, Rich?
Oh dear. I did quite enjoy that sort of seeing some of that kind of like day-to-day cost cutting type thing.
Yes, yeah.
So basically, the meals provided in the boxes were 11 or 12 pounds, and they're going to make them 10 pounds. Sorry, go.
If only they could get Jim Magilton on like free ploughman's lunch a week or something like this.
I won't stand for it. The ploughman's lunch that I signed up for was actually worth £11.90, and this one's only worth £11 if you count at the cost of raw materials.
He didn't get a market value, did he?
No.
What's the market price on his ploughman's lunch?
I used to get lovely flowers in this room, and now I don't get any. They only get flowers in the nice boxes.
Oh dear.
But they're spending a staggering amount on flowers. Is that a big thing when in the corporate circles of football grounds?
I don't think
the match was absolutely rotten, but they do put on a nice spread of flowers in the old box there. They do. I mean,
some nice petunias.
Nice petunias. I don't know where you get tulips at this time of year, but they find a way. Incredibly quickly, Magilton is also out the door. He's had an altercation with the player, leaves by mutual consent, denies any wrongdoing. So that's the last two under a cloud. So whether they are at this stage paying Sousa and Magilton, I don't know, or whether they reached an agreement, or whether they didn't have to pay them because they.
If you don't sever them, they could still be on gardening leave. Like Wednesday have had that situation, right? We've just had it. It's not the only managerial wage we're paying right now.
Well, that's effectively so they're having these conversations, saving money here, saving £1.90 on a plate of food in the boxes.
Downgrade the quality of the crisps.
You've got three Yeah. We're going to have to drop the Walkers and go to Golden Wonder. I'm really sorry. We didn't want to do this, but we have to. In some of the cheaper boxes, we might have to go for Space Invaders.
I've got a contact on some. I've got some links on some Tatos. Going to comes in.
We've just got to hope they like quarterbacks. This is.
Oh, who doesn't love a
roll
quarterback?
The dice.
Oh God, I love a quarterback. I want a quarterback now, Rich. Oh, that's my day ruined. I just want some cheap corn snacks. That's what I want.
They're so flavoursome, those cheap ones.
Are they cheeseburger flavoured?
I think so. I believe so.
Oof. Classy. Just like the Americans. Some of them quarterbacks, like they got in States.
They're very much the Tom Brady of the snack world.
Very much have. If they would have a crisp spouse, it would be Giselle.
Oh, of course.
Anyway.
Paul Hart, next in the door, resigns within a month. We see more fans sort of slagging off Briatore.
Right, with the wankiest chance going, I must say.
Well, we also get once again we get a title drop moment with the full year plan. You're having a laugh. So we get the title in again. Nicely done.
Mm-hmm.
So again, another parallel to Wednesday. We see Briatore and Bataya talking to a meeting of the players and saying which one of you's the captain at the moment. I think he says at one point, Briatore. But basically, it's the same
nonsense. Why you
like,
guys need Wikipedia?
But it's like, it's very, I mean, the bit that we see at least is just such pointless, you should try hard. And bomb sniffer Ephraim chips up and says, I think the man that pays our wages is right. I think he's onto something here. We should try. You could just collectively see all the other players roll their eyes.
Briatore constantly referencing the fans paying £10 is a real separation from reality. We also had another shot of the Springbok, Rich, and this time I learned they've got a pool table as well.
Oh my goodness!
Fuck, heady days at the Springbok.
If they've got Sky TV, I don't know why you'd ever want to leave.
Boy, what would I go on? It's got a pool table. It's got a dartboard.
But we get to the point, Briatore is staying away from the ground. He's had enough. He's in a huff. As you say, slagging off the fans for only paying 10 quid. And I'm pretty sure nobody got in for 10 quid. He then steps down as chairman.
Well, you either paid about 30 odd pounds or whatever it was at the time. Or I think it was like late 20s or something like that, probably. I imagine. Or you got in through that steward opening the gates. You know.
Which probably does average out somewhere near 10.
We need to get less people through the free gate, or more people through the side.
The problem is we're trying to charge people right next to the free gate, and people are thinking,
or we downgrade the pickled onions. I don't know. Tough decisions.
Oh dear. We get some excellent male streaker footage, pulling his pants down, showing his bum off to the world. He had a good run, didn't he? And then he kind of he ran into a corner and he cornered himself. Really, it was looking so promising, and then he got out of steam basically. But this is sort of the moment of things getting real. So Batia takes over. Gives an awkward team talk after a win. You could sort of tell he didn't want to be there, and the players didn't want to have to listen to him. I don't know who concocted it as a good idea. And this is where Warnock walks in the door. They sign Warnock. He's all charm and generous comments about the club and playing the game as he waves to the box after a debut win. They finished eighth that season. Sorry, go on.
I loved I don't know he was one of the parts of the, like, I think Batia's kind of people. He was a Indian Pakistani gentleman. The one working on the press release, going on the phone, talking about stability, saying,
yes,
I don't want everyone to think we are so fucking volatile. It was a great moment.
Did we ever get his name?
I don't think we did. No, I just think he was one of the people working there.
At one point, he's walking with Batia and says, "You always end up looking like Brad Pitt, and I look like your security," which is rather funny.
I like Batia a lot. I mean, that's more of a.
He seems like an all right chap, doesn't he?
He does. He seems all right
for a mega rich, whatever.
Yeah,
he seems all right. They finished safe. As we know, elsewhere Wednesday lose a relegation shootout with QPR and end up in League One. Any more bits and bobs from that season?
I enjoyed a lot of the Colin bits. I think that kind of started. This is the start of the kind of Colin meet to the documentary. Just as a kind of slightly aside from Colin, did you see that uncomfortable looking guy in the coat standing while Warnock speaks post match? He was like a toothless, gormless Cerberus.
I didn't pick up on that, but I need to go back now and look out.
I said, God, Colin gives great copy. Mucking, as I call it, cross headers, tackles. The journos just love him, don't they?
You can tell, like when Bruce was the manager and people talked about having a proper manager.
Yeah.
And I think you just see that with Warnock, don't you? He knows this is a game. There's a game to be played all the time here. You've got your team, and what you do with them is one thing, but you've got to sort of sweeten up the board.
Yeah.
You've got to play nice with the press. You've got there's you give a bit to the fact. Do you know, like, it's just, you can just see, not like sociopathic, but he's playing a game all the time. Like Colin, he's on all the time, and you just see little touches of it. There's a bit where the start of the next season, he's walks into the corporate box and somebody's giving him a bit of stick, saying, "Oh, you got lucky with the ref there," and he does a little like pretends he's giving the ref a backhander and stuff. And it's just like little things like that, and you're just like, I know. I bet these guys, the club just feels different when they walk in the door, and I bet there was that. You can sort of feel that everyone relaxes a bit because they just know that this is somebody who knows what they're about, and I'm sure that's what happened with Bruce as well.
Final bit, because the Newcastle celebrate promotion on their spot, which is something they come back to later, isn't it? Saying, so something that's always happened. Newcastle in that fucking hideous banana stripes away kit. Yeah,
awful.
Hideous. I also want to say with what you said about Colin is like, it's like a certain take off the Chris Rock joke, isn't it? Like you always meet people's representative.
Yes.
You always meet Colin's representative for different.
Yeah.
Don't you? Yeah.
Definitely. So we see this sort of unnamed character. We see him talking about the fact that on the phone saying, we did really well. We've got 9 new players and we've only spent 3.5 million spread over 2 years. So there's been a bit of upheaval, probably the classic Warnock thing of he's brought some quick little ones and some big stodgy ones as well.
Yeah.
And early doors. So one of the features throughout is watching the board at the games, and there's lots of effing and jeffing and sack this person, he's an idiot, whatever, and Palladini's right in the midst of it screaming and whatever else. But we see very early doors Battia saying to Gianni Palladini, if he wants to scream at the players, he'll have to sit somewhere else this season, which did make me laugh. And you could just see Palladini just put back in his box, and he looked a little bit sheepish at that point. And basically they go off like an absolute rocket. There's not a huge amount of drama in this third season, because
isn't it? I thought it was funny that like I think I must have missed that bit that you said, because I was like looking back and being like, Warnock did what he always did, didn't he? Which is like, I'm going to bring in a smorgasbord of strikers. Like he's got Jamie Mackey, he picked up Leon Clark from us.
Oh yeah.
And also, like, there's a slight kind of association, as I will say, to kind of go back a little bit. With some of those post-match talks, we got to have an insight into just the sheer orgy of buffet food after every game.
Yes.
I mean, I'm very sympathetic to Leon Clark now and his weight issues while he was at Sheffield Wednesday now, because me and you, Rich, we'd be ruined. Crazy. Our professional careers, we'd just be... If we were in this and like the bit where, Battia comes in to talk to the players, me and you would just be sneaking down a few sandwiches that we kept from the last game.
Yeah, good one. Yeah,
I also love the preseason for that one. It looked like a sports day.
It did.
The camera clearly missed Warnock taking them for a 3-legged race drill with assistant manager.
Getting beanbags from different distances along the way and putting them in a bucket. There was also one of the exercises was, and I don't know. I mean, I guess you want to train for what you do, and if you're a Warnock defender, you might be doing some shoving. But there was a player holding weights up. At like sort of chest level and kind of pushing them forward whilst the coach pushed them back. And I just thought what is that for? That's a very strange thing to do. But yeah, sports, the spirit of sports day was definitely in the air watching those scenes.
The cringiest bit of this documentary, it's not very cringy, even though it's funny and you're like, what the hell happened there?
Yeah.
The bit that just made it puts as a man I've been here and I've done embarrassing things before. The awkwardness of the fan asking Warnock if he'll do him a favor is hard to watch.
Yes.
I'll
try.
I'll try.
Yeah. Those interactions that never look good, do they really?
No, it's tough. Yeah. Anyway.
So we see Manish in the Football League show studio saying that QPR are having their best start for 63 years. And after 6 weeks of the season, they've got a plus 17 goal difference. So all those different strikers it's working. After 8 games, they're 20 plus, and they've got 26 points out of the first 10 games. I mean, that is jaw-dropping form. That's insane.
That's what, 8 wins, 2 draws?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. Including one delicious little morsel I really snacked on a lot was being the pigs away at Bumhole Bramall Lane. Bumhole Staying. That was when Blackie was manager. Old Kevin Blackwell. Old the Eggman. And that was the one which they dicked them 3-0 and he was sacked quickly afterwards.
Right.
Remembering being incredibly ruffled on Football Heaven.
I don't know, Seth. You tell me, Seth.
Oh, so much fun. So much fun.
How often does that ever work? Football loves doing that. There's this great, iconic, great is relative here with Warnock, but there's this iconic manager, and for Sheffield United, Warnock is an iconic manager. And you go to his assistant hoping that somehow they were the power behind the throne. I don't really know what the thing is. But football does that I guess they're a cheap option.
I know. Well, yeah.
But how often does that work? It's one of those definition of madness things. Is keep trying that. And
I think in the kind of defense of the pigs and that situation, it did work for a bit. I think the thing is the wheels came off in usual pig playoff fashion.
Yes,
they got close on the Blackie a few times. But then that's more of an argument to say actually the revolving door of kind of guff managers that we've kind of seen through this documentary, they were fairly there with the players that they had. I don't ever think I was looking back at that squad and I'm like, that's a pretty, for me to do that recap of the front end of this, near the front end of this show, it's a pretty competent championship squad.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But it's not like a top 6 one. And I mean, that's the staggering thing that for the, the power of the magic of Warnock is that he's going to come in and spend, if he wants to come and do this, he's going to spend a fucking shitload of money.
But then, 2 or 3.5 million is not.
No, but he spends in the right places and he plans on his characters.
Right,
and this was the Adele Tarap season as well, who looked an absolute phenomenon at that level.
He did.
And the player who I went to look and see where he is now, I think he's at somewhere at Benfica playing as a defensive midfielder.
Oh, wow. He's sort of done that drop back as he gets older thing.
I guess so, yeah. But I mean, it's a long time ago, and that's, it's like 12 years ago. A lot can happen within that time. But for me, he's still very much key in image. You associate players with certain times. He was that pacey bag of tricks player who just did a little bit of everything, really.
I think certainly as well, and you could maybe argue that he's a manager that's had his day now, Warnock. But for that period of time, he got the meta game of whatever was going on in the championship football-wise. He knew how to play winning football at championship level. I think Paul Sturrock had it at League One for a time when he was our manager. He just knew in a replicable way what wins games at that level.
Yeah.
And it was a sliding scale. If you could give him more money, it would happen easier, which is what happened at QPR. If he had less money, it would happen slower. But he would slowly build a team that would consistently win. You're talking about, let's pick up 2 points or more per game on average. That's what it works out as over the season. And he he just had it. He's still got a fair amount of it, but hopefully maybe things have changed. There's a bit more quality in the Championship. I don't know whether that's the case or not. I'd like to think it's the case.
I guess it'll be interesting to see what happens to Borough this forthcoming season in the Championship, right?
Yeah.
To see, but his currency, he still feels more in currency rather than your Pulis's of the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that taking United up, and it's just that hot. He was in such a hot streak, really, in terms of his career there. Because did he take Palace up as well?
I believe he did. Yeah.
So you've got 3 promotions in a row at different clubs.
Pretty much,
it's pretty staggering.
Not too far off with Cardiff, I guess, right?
Not too far off with Cardiff. Not too far off with Leeds, I don't think.
Anyway. To kick on a bit. The comedy of Colin asking for players with a sly ask of the transfer market, and then the camera cuts to Harry Redknapp is extremely well done.
I said Amit and Warnock talk transfer budgets and targets, and summoned like Bloody Mary or Candyman when the word transfer is said often enough. We zoom in on Harry Redknapp in the distance. He's brought his car door with him and he looks interview ready.
Beautiful.
He would have been Spurs boss at the time.
Interesting. Okay.
But interesting to see him kind of looming, because he did then he took over as manager from Warnock, I think.
Oh, when he got up and then struggled, he was the one that... No, it was Mark Hughes, wasn't it?
Oh, it was Mark Hughes they went to, but he did end up as the QPR manager after Spurs.
Do you, like me, Rich, like pronouncing Mark Hughes, but like it kind of becomes one word? Like Mark Hughes. Mark Hughes.
I always describe him as Dower Welshman Mark Hughes. I feel like that's his full title.
So Warnock saying that he'd love 4 million when he could do with 500k is classic Colin.
Yes, yeah.
It kind of hurt me a little, him saying they should just flog Clark for 200k.
Yeah.
Clark was a Heffernan.
He was. We see them sign Routledge, a quick guy, and Ishmael Miller. Well, we don't see them. We just see them score goals in the next montage. Routledge, a quick guy, and Ishmael Miller, a big guy. So he kind of got at least one of each of his favourites.
I really enjoyed Amit referring to him as Neil Warnock constantly, like his full name. Very sweetly respectful, but also kind of surreal. They feel they've bagged themselves a second-tier promotion rock star.
Yeah. And they also that conversation, they have that conversation with Warnock, and then when Warnock leaves, he sort of says like, we're going to have to sell such and such, but we don't tell him that now. Let him have today, and then later down the line will be, you have to sell these guys. So they're trying to like play him somehow. I don't know whether that worked or not, but just funny to see their little like huddle afterwards. It's like, don't worry about it, mate. It's in my pocket. I've got it. So the sort of kick in the tail here, the sting in the tail, drama-wise, is QPR are still top of the league going into the second half of the season, but there's lots of focus on the signing of Diego Faulin, Argentinian midfielder come striker, and whether or not they used a non-FIFA agent, whether there was third-party ownership. Basically, it's probably not far off the era of the Tevez Mascherano thing, and it's the same sort of questions getting asked, really. I just made a note. I can't quite remember what prompted this. I made a note saying, despite the incredible season, Briatore still moans about Warnock. He is a complete bellend. Because he kept talking about choosing to lose and things like that. QPR secure promotion and the title. We see a wild-haired Gianni Palladini kissing anybody nearby and telling Warnock, "You saved my life. I love you." So then we have the trial. So the season's finished. They've won the game. They've won the league. They've been presented with the trophy, but there's this question mark hanging over the legality of this move, and there's the potential of a points deduction. So we have the trial, 7 charges, 4 against the club, 3 against Gianni Palladini himself for bringing the game into disrepute, including bringing the game into disrepute. Press ganged on the way to his car after one of the days of the trial. He says, "I tell you, the sky is blue and everything is blue." Profound.
Mm.
The trial is supposed to be 3 days, but it's delayed. The verdict will be given at 11 a.m. on the last day of the season. So this is kind of it's a good from a purely enjoying the drama of a documentary standpoint. This is all good stuff. It's all grist to the mill for making it an exciting ending. We see a fair amount of Clem outside the ground, who is a character that you either love or hate, or love to hate.
Speaking about a manager like Neil Warnock, Mark Clement is always on, isn't he?
He is always on.
There's no off button on Mark Clement.
He's always talking in that same sort of slightly whispering in your ear kind of way, even if you're just a fan that has grabbed a hold of his collar and forced him to speak to him on the street.
But kind of always loud.
Yes, yeah, very.
Gruff but loud.
Gruff but loud.
Clem.
So we see another, wild-eyed, wild-haired Gianni Palladini barge his way into the changing room. "No points deduction! No points deduction!" He screams it again and again. He runs out to the pitch. He screams it up at the box, celebrating like it was life or death and collapsing in tears. You do wonder, I mean, I don't want to make any, cast any aspersions. But him saying to Warnock that "you saved my life" and the way he reacted to that thing, I know obviously football matters a lot when you're in the midst of it. But about whether like genuinely he might have, there was some threats from, you just think rich Italians, I'm sorry, this is probably racist of me to say, but you wonder where the money comes from. You wonder what the ties are, what the links are, and whether there was more than football on the line for Gianni Palladini in this season. So 2 charges were proven out of the, or they were found guilty of 2 of the charges out of the 7, but no points deduction. They paid a whopping fine. It was, I say whopping. It was just less than half of a dowry. They paid £875,000 to the FA. Part of that being paying their fees, and that was one of the debts that they were sort of threatened if they didn't pay it back, they might not get to play football the next season. But I think eventually it got reduced fairly considerably. So the post the action, we get another kind of scroll of information. So the Formula One guys sell up to Tony Fernandez, who became the chairman and remains in place as the chairman. The Mittals kept their 33%, and Ahmet Batia remained vice chairman. Gianni Palladini left by mutual consent, and as we touched on, Warnock was sacked just after Christmas and replaced by dour Welshman Mark Hughes. Any other bits and bobs before we kind of take a look at the piece as a whole?
I think it's interesting to always look at, like, we still have never seen a points deduction from a player's rights issues, which again is the nature seemingly of, if you buy an Argentinian, then you only get partial of an Argentinian. Like if you bought, like you said, if you bought half a Argentinian Ian Dowie,
you'd only get the forehead.
You'd only get the forehead, yeah. You'd only get the bit of the earthworm that you cut off, but the rest of it kind of goes back. Yeah. So really, you're getting 2 Ian Dowies in the process. But then I remember, like, Forlan was a very good player for QPR.
Yes, he was.
But I never felt that he was. I don't know. There's a lot of Ferraris kind of sticking around.
Yeah.
That QPR team, like it didn't feel something that's going to really rock the boat with that. It's not really Carlos Tevez for West Ham, is it? Really?
Well, I know we have a particular perspective on that, but I always thought his influence was fairly muted for West Ham. I know.
Pronounced
I know
enough through a
more
few
margins.
situations, right?
What's that? Sorry.
But pronounced enough for a few situations, I believe.
I guess so. He played 26 games and scored 7 goals for West Ham.
It's kind of pronounced. I don't know.
At the bottom, things are more pronounced, aren't they? If you're winning lots of games, then and scoring lots of goals, one player's influence on that is a lot smaller. It's interesting. I know what you're saying. Fowlin, I think, was like he was one of the hot properties in the Championship. I think he was sort of one of these guys regularly linked with Premier League moves, but not the be all and end all. But should that matter? Even if they do nothing, should it matter? I don't know. It's a tricky one.
Mm-hmm.
They also spent a crap load of money at QPR to get up.
Indeed, and then they probably paid vast sums of money in breaking FFP.
They did.
Process. Yeah.
Well, the Championship, the EFL told them that they wouldn't get back in if they didn't pay the amount. But I think in the end they paid a trifling sum, didn't they? I think they paid something like 18,000 to get back in against a huge, what should have been a huge fine. So yeah, what did you make of the film?
I enjoyed it a lot. I think I talked about that kind of like breakneck pace, but it felt very interesting and entertaining. It felt kind of, I don't know, just very visually enjoyable.
Yeah.
Which I didn't really get from the Leeds one. We talked about that because that had a very kind of breakneck, heady kind of cocaine montage.
Yes,
feel, and that kind of, we mentioned that trans world sports vibe that kind of came off when we looked at that one. So no, that was good. It's fun. It has enough moments of kind of being telling, but just also just kind of being, just capturing some of the mental energy that was kind of going off around that football club.
Yeah. And
really staggering that, they got that. They got it right.
Yeah, absolutely. It all worked at the end, weirdly. And I think that's the thing as a Wednesday fan watching it. You naturally think about what might have been.
And there's so many comparisons, right? Kind of rumors of meddling with team squads and certain kind of outside influences. A bit of a kind of stripping of masculinity and ownership for the manager through other kind of focuses. Very much a contemptuous relationship right now with the fan base. Increased ticket prices, which that's a great way to piss fans off.
Yeah, changing the identity, changing the badge,
changing the badge. There's a lot to kind of think about, but yet it worked.
It did
for that period and what they were trying to do. I mean, since then I think the combination you had though, and you saw, I think Amit Bhatia seems like a very good, sensible businessman. I mean, sometimes you see somebody operating and you're like, oh yeah, this is why this person is successful. And I think he immediately gives up. I think Briatore, I know he's made a lot of money in his time. It feels like it must have been a very long time ago, because he just is this kind of like sloppy mess. He looks kind of half cut. He's constantly angry. Like that is not a functioning, successful person. Whereas Bhatia is a young, kind of swashbuckling, presumably money-making machine. He just feels professional and sensible and all the things that you'd like from a chairman. And then you add to that Warnock, who is I think that one of the main things it makes me think is what might have been if Bruce had stayed, because we never quite got our season with the trusty operator in charge. We never did, no, and never gave him the power and the tools to do what he says on the tin, right?
Yeah.
There's very much, I think, an argument for, in kind of comparison, to see things that are not there, that I agree with you with kind of Amit Bhatia's kind of running of the club. Forgive me if I've mispronounced or misspelled his name.
I think I've probably said it about 3 different ways, but
it's okay. But I think it shows the power of having someone who has the steel and the tact and probably emotional intelligence to kind of be a barrier between some of those intoxicated moments of passion and anger from some of the Italian characters.
He could see that crazy energy was unhelpful, couldn't he? And he presumably inserted himself as the kind of go-between between the football side of things and the board, which is sensible and it's what you want. I think it's probably a shame for QPR long term that he was shuffled away after that. Like he almost sort of did the job, and then he like Warnock was almost kind of shuffled off into the background, because I think Fernandez is a pretty sort of dictatorial controller now of things. The badge has gone back to how it was, but they don't look like they're going to be repeating the Premier League success anytime soon. I've written my question that I'd written down was, who had your sympathy, if anyone? I think we're both fairly impressed by Amit Bhatia. What did you? I think probably the most divisive figure in the whole thing. Well, do you agree with me that Briatore just seemed like an awful prick?
Yes, he did.
Good. What did you make after I think Palladini's sort of a fascinating character in the midst of all this. He kind of vacillates and swings about in the wind, depending on who his master is at any given moment. But what did you think of him as a kind of central character in the piece?
Sorry, who's that again, Rich?
Yanni Palladini. Sorry.
It just reminds me of people who speak very arrogantly and with great authority about things that they don't know anything about. And usually there's a lot of those people who actually get to kind of high positions. And unfortunately, it's something that you do see in the world.
Yeah.
So it dismays me to see another one of these characters who don't seem to have any degree of humility or seem to kind of listen or do any kind of learning as part of the process. You know, they're very, very headstrong in their opinions and don't seem to diverge from those. I think that's a real weakness.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree.
It's difficult being within this sphere and things that we don't particularly know about because we're not mega wealthy businessmen. Like there seems to be yet.
Sorry.
I mean, when was the last time, Rich, that you checked the merchandise for this?
Yes.
Or even the promotional contract we have with Manscaped.
Oh well, we're raking it in, aren't we?
Exactly. I think exactly. Why are we still doing our regular jobs in addition to this, Rich? There we go. There we go.
We're fools.
Because we just love money. We just like making more money. That's right.
We love money and hate time. We're like
Mr. Burns. We trade it all for a little bit more, wouldn't we, Rich?
Excellent.
So, like, there's a mentality of thinking that you want to see a degree of passion from people within who working in a kind of football environment, but you need that kind of tact and intelligence and diplomacy and emotional intelligence in situations like this, and you need that kind of steely, cool. You know, we need people with ice water running through their veins in these pressurized situations to make it work.
It's also, we know, this is Palladini and Briatore. We know there are people that ignore all of the evidence to the contrary and seem to believe that there is a kind of God-given right for their football team to win every single game and to do it at a canter. And we know that exists within fan bases. People are stupid. That's fine. I think people are allowed to be. What you don't want is that energy in the boardroom. But I think the fact that there's two characters like that within a small group of people at somewhere like QPR probably tells you a lot about why the spending is so out of control in the championship, because it's a lot of boys and their toys, and they don't understand why their toy isn't winning every time.
Hanging with the boys.
The boys. No, it's interesting. I just sort of feel like Palladini kind of almost goes on a journey. Maybe he didn't learn anything. Maybe if he had another egomaniacal person sat alongside him, he'd go on. I can't work out whether he's an Iago and he's just parroting what the person next to him is saying. And where I say Iago there, I'm not talking about from Shakespeare. I mean from Disney's Aladdin. I don't know any Shakespeare, but I do know Disney. And, he's Gilbert Gottfried on the shoulder. Idiota!
What formation would Gilbert Gottfried talk about constantly, Rich?
4-4-2, it's got to be. It's too soon for 4-4-2. Anyway, but is he just repeating what's next to him? So when he has a sane, sensible person sat next to him, he suddenly behaves like a human being, or did he kind of cotton on to the fact that living on your last, the edge of your nerves all the time is just not a good energy for anybody to be around? Probably he didn't learn anything, because obviously the scenes towards with the win and the court decision or the arbitration decision, he's all over the place. So maybe he didn't learn anything, but he's just kind of an interesting. He's all the way. He's kind of our way into the room so often. So a lot of the time we spend a lot of time with him and we see his whims. My final question that I've got written down is what's going on with Warnock's hair? I've wanted to talk about this for a little while, but he is completely hairless apart from the top of his head. He doesn't appear to have eyelashes, eyebrows. He's got no hair on his legs or arms. What's going on? Has he got alopecia?
He could well do. Yeah.
His hair got wet though in the celebrations, and it still looked pretty good. I
think he just needs to get greased up so he could go down some air vents like Bruce Willis's character in Die Hard.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Hey up, lads. Yippee-ki-yay.
Yippee-ki-yay.
I enjoyed there was a bit where he says, hey up, lads. To some,
hey up, lads.
To some people in the, schmoozing in the post-match. I loved him with his post-match wine. Yeah,
he was immediately on the search. Can I get a glass of wine around it? Can I still get a red in here? Oh, so worth the watch, I think.
Pretty much so. Yeah.
Obviously, if you've got to the end of this, you know what's going to happen. But it's an enjoyable. It's not, as I say, it's 90 minutes that slips down very easy. Made by a Wednesdayite, we found out now as well. So,
according to Wikipedia, sources not cited.
Which is, there's no higher source of knowledge than that.
No, there's not. No.
But hopefully, the fact that we've watched it on Amazon kicks him a few shekels. Yeah. Anything else in summary?
No, just a lot of fun. Enjoyed. I wish I'll probably be hoping to see some more football documentaries soon. I don't think it's something we're going to do again in the immediate future for the podcast. I think hopefully leading into the next 3 episodes and coming up into our 100th episode, we'll have some Wednesday themed stuff. But I thought it was an interesting one to look at, and there's definitely some parallels to think about in terms of our beloved Owls.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there we go. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you again, Luke.
You too. I had this weird thing, listeners, where I was going to say, I haven't really been missing thinking about Sheffield Wednesday. The news, which thankfully we didn't cover, has been depressing. However, I've really enjoyed talking to you again, Rich.
Yeah, and hopefully folks at home will have got something out of this. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time, but in the meantime, look after yourselves and you look after yourself, Luke. And cheerio! Thanks for spending some time with us.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.